Willkommen zurück bei Zodiac Trial. Im letzten Part haben wir unseren Entführer kennengelernt, denn Dragon, Snake und Maus wurden entführt, und zwar von Dog. Aber nur um sie zu schützen, denn diese drei sind wahrscheinlich die einzigen, die wirklich sterben sollten bei diesem Spiel. Und sie leben. Von daher, hey, gut gemacht. Und nun gehen wir nochmal über den Fall rüber von dem Ermordeten. Und natürlich dem Vater von Brian, damit wir wissen, stimmt das alles oder gibt es da ein paar Probleme? Und bisher haben wir den Bauplan des Büros. Und nun geht Maus nochmal den Tag durch. The day started with Bowen meeting with a contractor who was doing construction right outside the building. Thinking about it, that was probably horse. Macht Sinn. Bowen's secretary, who I guess was sheep, arrived at some point in the morning. As well, early enough to see Horse leave Bowen's office and go down the stairs. The athlete, who I guess will be Tiger, then arrived at the scene. Bowen had a policy of only meeting with people when he felt good and ready, so the secretary directed the athlete to the waiting room to the right. The next person to arrive would be the artist. That's you, right, Snake? Correct. I was commissioned to make a sculpture for Mr. Bowen. It was a hollow metal statue of a giant wallowing in despair, made from the remains of my past failed sculptures. I quite like that piece. So if I remember right, you were carrying the statue with you at the time. Yes, that thing was bigger than me, so moving it was a real pain in the ass. You were told you could drop the statue, and then you were directed to the leftmost waiting room. Indeed. Sheep then proceeded to take my statue, almost drop it, and then move it into the storage room. Most people would start looking on their phones or reading a magazine when directed to wait. But according to you, you did no such thing. Indeed. I was deep in my thoughts that day. When I get in that state, it's almost trance-like. If I'm like that, I can be very simple-minded, forgetting even the most basic of things. So while in thought, I blankly stared out the window. Oh, but don't get me wrong. Just because I wasn't paying attention doesn't mean I would have missed something. Sure. Anyways, then that actor came in the building. Let me guess, Rooster? Presumably. He was also shown to the rightmost waiting room. A bit of time passed until the actor's stomach started acting up. He exited the rightmost waiting room and made for the bathroom. Correct. I saw him exit myself. A bit after that, the secretary went downstairs to the first floor to have breakfast in the break room. Around this point was the earliest the autopsy incident Brown could have been killed. But not when he was killed, right? No. I saw the secretary leave, and I also had a direct line of view to Amadeus' office. After finally dealing with his stomach problems... ich verpasse es immer. After finally dealing with his stomach problems, the actor left the restroom and returned to the rightmost break room. Then the secretary returned from breakfast and sat back down at her desk. This all line up with what you saw, Snake? Indeed. A bit more time passed, and this is when Aaron Morris finally comes up the stairs and enters Amadeus' office. Amadeus texted him to meet him in his office, that he had something important to tell him. Importantly, Aaron was wearing a big overcoat and was carrying a suitcase. Unlike everyone else present, he had a means of concealing what would be the fatal weapon, as well as the stacks of cash later found missing from Amadeus' safe. This is where Aaron's story starts getting nonsensical. He claims that Amadeus remotely fired him, saying that he didn't want to be in the same room as Aaron, in case Aaron got violent. According to Aaron, when he walked in the room, Aaron's laptop started to play a message left for him that told him to pack stuff and leave. Furious, Aaron stormed out of the room and complied. This was Aaron's real mistake. He underestimated how thoroughly cyber analysts can vet his stuff. No such video or audio file was found on the laptop. No files had been deleted from that for a while. The Bluetooth speakers the laptop was connected to, which played the message, hadn't been connected to any device other than a laptop. Basically, there's no trace of this message Aaron talks about anywhere. And that's not nothing. Also, it's such a weird fucking liar. I mean, leaving a message in your office to fire somebody? Who's ever heard of some bullshit like that? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe that was a point. Huh? Forget it. Anyways, The important point here is that he claims Amadeus wasn't in the room at this point. Or at least, not in the room in a way Aaron could see.
Say, when was the last time a reliable source saw Amadeus alive? Would it be Horse?
I think she might have talked to him or something. I don't remember the details on that part well enough. I'll have to learn more about that. Anyways, it was at this point that Aaron drove off back to his home. The construction worker Horse saw him leaving. He and some co-workers had been working in the area for a while after all. Some amount of cash bearing Amadeus' fingerprints would later be found in the car's glove compartment. Next, Amadeus texted Snake, asking him to bring the statue into his office.
It was certainly odd. I planned on talking to the man about the piece myself.
However,
I knew that Amadeus liked to do things this way. I complied and went into the storage compartment. I noticed that Chief had been kind enough to put the statue atop a piece of cardboard and leave it on a dolly. Wheeling it with the dolly made it much easier to transport the statue. Although not as easy as I would have expected. You're saying that thing was like a fake text?
That's the going theory.
Then hold on, how would Mouse have sent that? I mean, he left it as point, right? And the bone was eventually found on Bowen's body. Then what's the deal?
It turns out, Bowen had an app on his phone which allowed scheduled text to be sent at a later time. An analysis revealed that the app was used on the text.
Well, that doesn't look good for Bowen's case. Anyway, I dropped off the statue, dolly and all, in Bowen's office. At this point, I was a little irritated about how I was being treated, so I didn't bother arranging the piece for him. I simply left the building.
So at this point, your testimony ends. Coincidentally, the autopsy estimates that the latest Bowen could have been killed was about when Snake left.
Oh, then perhaps I did this.
Behave.
Wait a second. Couldn't he totally have done it? The secretary was gone for a good bit, right? Couldn't he have entered Bowen's office at this point?
Not possible.
Huh?
Remember, Snake wasn't the only witness. Tiger was also there, sitting at a place where she could have seen through the window. She might not have been focused on it all the time, but the way the building was set up, the door to Bowen's office opening would be in full view of the window. She could miss it. In a sense, Snake and Tiger kept each other in check. Tiger couldn't leave the room without Snake seeing her. Snake couldn't enter the office without Tiger seeing him. And no one else could get to the office without both of them acting as witness.
A rather elegant maze of vision, would you say? A real pain in the ass, it sounds like.
Anyways, after this, a little time passed. Then the actor got fed up with waiting, left the waiting room, and stormed into Amadeus' office. The secretary tried to stop him, but he pushed past her. The secretary expected to hear shouting, knowing her boss was not a man who tolerated such disrespect. However, a bit of time passed and nothing happened. Curious, the secretary looked into the room to see the actor strolling around in Bowen's chair.
What? So Rosa was just poking around the victim's room all alone for a bit? Ain't that suspicious?
It is odd. Might be worth asking about. At the time, the actor claimed he was just admiring the room. The secretary kicked him out the room, and at this point, the actor left the whole building fed up. However, at this point, the secretary got worried, not knowing where Mr. Bowen was. She tried calling his phone, but got no response. If she had really listened, she might have heard the phone going off in the safe. After a bit of time, she began to worry where her employer may be. She called 911 about the person who had gone missing.
A bit of an overreaction at this point, don't you think?
Well, she was right to overact. Anyways, a cop that happened to be nearby was sent to check out the place.
Bunny. That cop was presumably Bunny.
The secretary explained the situation to the cop, and in turn, the cop began to search the area. Before too long, he decided to open a rather large and conspicuous safe in Mr. Bowen's office. Inside, he found the body of one Amadeus Bowen stuffed in his own safe. Some amount of cash had seemingly been moved out of the way to make room. It was at this point the scene was declared a crime scene, and the athlete was asked to leave.
Wait, so Tiger was just sitting here the whole time? It tracks.
Amadeus was found to have been bludgeoned to death with a statue in his office. A statue that would later be found in a river nearby Aaron Moore's house. It was also strangled with a thin-wire-like instrument. Coroners actually argued over whether or not this was the thing that killed him, and the blow to his head was post-mortem, or if it just simply knocked him out. So yeah, that's the case.
Impressive memory, Mouse. Especially for someone not involved in the case.
Yeah, you know it better than I do. Like I said, my dad talked about it quite a bit.
So like, that's kinda all, but what's the point?
Huh?
I mean, by your own story, it's clear that Brian's dad did it, right? That would indeed be the natural conclusion.
When you combine everybody's testimony, the time of death, the money in the car, the odd story about the pre-recorded message, and the stolen MasterCard. Yeah, it definitely looks that way. I mean, that's what I thought before the longest time. But if there's more to the story, then maybe... I was lost of words. It's not like I could have come up with a solution. How could I? The word had been unable to prior to this point. However, Dog clicked his tongue.
You know, I think there's actually a hole in the story.
What do you mean? For the first time, Dog thought carefully about his next words.
You know when I showed everybody the knife?
Yeah.
Well, I was reaction testing. I'm a pretty good poker player, which means I'm pretty good at reading people. And while I was minor, when I showed off the knife, I thought I saw tell. I wasn't sure before if I was just imagining things or what, but recounting the story like that with suspect in mind.
Oh. Before Dog could continue, something very strange happened. All of a sudden, heavy metal music began to blast through the room. It was coming from some speaker on the wall. I hadn't paid much mind to before this point. I guess it was a system meant to play music? I tried to ask Dog what was happening, but whatever he answered, I could barely hear. I mean, it was blaring loud. Why did speakers even go this loud? Dog began to walk up the stairs, heading to the door, trying to see what the hell was happening. However, he wasn't the one to open the door. The door swung open on its own, and out of the door came a gloved hand holding out a shotgun. Holding a shotgun right to the head of Dog. No, this wasn't good. I tried to rush forwards, but the chain connected to my neck pulled me back. God damn it, Dog! Why did you need to so slowly imprison us when we were on the same team? It seemed as though Dog was frantically trying to convince the person of something. Although it seemed like a moot point, with the music being as loud as it was, but his face was flushed with something. Something more than just horror. It was recognition in his eyes. After a few seconds, it was clear that negotiations were not in the cards. Dog began to turn his head to us. And in that moment, I saw the shotgun recoil back. It recoiled because it had just sent a bullet flying through Dog's head. No! Why? When everything else was so loud, I could hear my own scream with such crystal clear accuracy. Why was that what I was able to hear? After firing the shotgun, the gloved hand which had been holding it retreated back behind the door frame. Dog, on the other hand, put his 2 seconds left of life to some use. One of his hands he clasped around his own mouth. With his others, he stuck out 3 fingers. I had no idea what it meant. But he looked me dead in the eyes when he did this. He was doing it for me. It was unnerving, the sight of Dog staring me down with blood rushing out the side of his head. I don't know at what point he stopped seeing me, but I know at this point I stopped seeing him. Because a few seconds later, the lights in the basement went out. It was pitch black. At the same time, the music stopped. I could very clearly hear the sound of footsteps going down the stairs. I could hear the footsteps approaching, and I could hear the sound of a shotgun being pumped. I closed my eyes, trembling and shaking. And then, I couldn't hear much of anything. Hello? Is this the right place? Oh, prick. So good of you to join us. Come have a seat. Let me pour you a drink. Rusa was standing at the bar tap, acting like a bartender. Been watching Noah recently. How did you know? Just a guess. Well, it's good to see you guys. I'm surprised we're allowed to enter this place. I thought the police would be keeping it under surveillance. We were, but it became clear pretty soon that Dog didn't plan on returning to his bar when he was on the run from the state. So, if no one's here running this place, how was it all unlocked? Locks are really more of a suggestion than anything. Anyways, is this everybody?
Everybody who we know is still alive at any rate.
Don't speak like that. I'm sure Mouse, Snake, and Dragon are all still alive.
Unfortunately, The odds for that drop day by day.
Ox, since when did you become such a pessimist?
We talked back in that high school, right? Anyways, I also didn't think Dog planned on killing those 3 when he kidnapped them. But the practicalities of keeping 3 grown adults as hostage for weeks are quite difficult. If they don't show up soon.
Well, maybe this is a matter Doc wishes to speak with us about. I imagine he didn't call us here for no good reason.
Yeah, about that. Are we sure this is a good idea, meeting him like this? Don't we have, I don't know, brought the cops or something? Hey, we did bring cop. But it's you after all. Yeah, you got me there.
Well, basically, I was very strongly suggested not to contact backup.
Strongly suggested?
Obviously, it would be ideal to contact the correct authorities. However, Doc made it pretty clear that he wouldn't be showing hide or nor hair of himself if he had heard about the cops poking around. As next cop, he probably has connections that could inform him if he tried anything. At this point, I think it's just best to comply.
This feels unwise.
Yeah, I thought we didn't negotiate with terrorists.
Well, Doc should be showing up soon, right? Then we start to get some answers about this whole crazy incident, and we can finally wrap things up, ending things for good.
Oh, we'll be bringing things to an end, alright? A wave of panic shot through the room as people took a flashback to the last time they heard a digitally altered voice. However, before anything could be done, the entire room flashed bright and filled with smoke. The group was in chaos. There was pushing, shouting, screaming, and the sounds of loud electric shocks. One by one, the sound of bodies hitting the floor echoed through the bar. The lights flickered out, and the already prone bodies were put to sleep for sure. It was a whip. It was a wipe. Nicht schon wieder! Waking up in an unfamiliar environment after being electrocuted, bound, and gagged isn't something you should feel déjà vu about. However, as my head spun, I felt just like I did when I woke up in Brian's crazy death game. And as I looked around my surroundings, the similarities didn't even end there. Nein! Wir sind zurück! Nein! I realized I was in another classroom. I realized there was something strapped to my stomach under my shirt. I saw a computer with a mouse image attached to it. No, there's no way! This couldn't be happening. Not again. I began to hyperventilate. It felt like a compressor in my stomach was squeezing me to death. I physically felt ill, like vomiting. Actually, yeah, no, I was about to vomit. I heard some people describing vomit as cathartic. Those people should be locked in a prison on an island forever. It's a hard feeling. Your insides falling out of you? And when it was done, I didn't feel better, but much worse. My head felt so heavy, I almost fell right onto the puddle of vomit. Why? What did I ever do to deserve all of this? Why can't I just get my life back? I never did anything wrong. I was a good kid. I had a life. I had friends, dreams, enemies, struggles, fears, deadliness. My life felt like a slog at the time, but at least it was my life. Never before had I so desperately wanted something. I just wanted to return to normal. I didn't want to do this. But how productive is this? Like a switch had been flipped, my body stopped shivering. That's right, me. That's a talent of yours. You can flip that fear switch off. Freaking out accomplished nothing. I could only move forward with a steady hand. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay. I thought about what had happened. When I didn't freak out over remembering the death of Dog, I knew my technique had worked. Still, I felt bad about it. Dog. He was a weird dude. He had kidnapped me without my consent for seemingly half-decent reasons, but there was definitely more to it than that. He had known about a lot of dirty secrets for a long time. He claimed not to care much for life, but the look of fear that crossed his face that day, no one deserved that. In the end, there was someone who had been murdered. He would be missed, but thinking any more about this death would be a waste. So, what was strapped to my stomach? I lifted my shirt and took a look. It was some sort of metal device. If we were to go where precedent, it was probably the device that could kill me. Awesome. Was it even worth trying to get it off me when I already knew the outcome of such an attempt? Probably not. I decided to go check out the computer. Last time it was a tablet, not computer. I tried interacting with it, but it was powered down. Great. Well, there was but so much that could be done inside this classroom. At some point, I need to move forwards. Exiting the classroom, I found myself in a hallway. It was at this point that I was certain that this school was a separate one from the last place I had previously been imprisoned in. I was clearly on the first floor of the building. It was hard to tell just from my current location, but it seemed like the school was a lot smaller than the one I had been at before. Looking on the ground, I noticed a trail of taped arrows leading me, well, somewhere. I guess that's where I was supposed to go? However, before I could move anywhere, I noticed a familiar face walk out of a nearby classroom. Oggs! Mouse. Relieved to see someone I knew, I rushed over and hugged him. He responded a little awkwardly, but ultimately he responded by embracing me in kind. I'm so glad to finally see somebody else. I'm glad to know you're not dead. Although I must say, I have a number of questions. Yeah, that makes two of us. It seems we keep finding ourselves in thoroughly unreasonable situations, huh? Indeed. Say, why is this school empty? Is it not at its school day? Mouse, how could you be so foolish? It's winter break. Really? I swear it hasn't been that long since the Zodiac race. It has. Maybe winter break starts earlier nowadays. Anyways, probably more important things to talk about. Indeed. I gave Ox the short version of everything that had happened with me. As I explained it to him, he nodded, as if he had expected something like what I was saying. In turn, he gave a brief recap of everything that had occurred on the outside since it was kidnapped. He also talked about how all the past victims had been summoned to Dog's bar, how another mysterious voice played on the speaker, and how they were all ambushed. So, basically it looks like it's starting up again. Ox took a deep sigh. That would appear to be the case, yes. To what end? I remain entirely uncertain. The supposed mastermind of the previous incident should be dead, and yet we are all here. A true mystery. At this point, I think we don't really have any choice but to roll with the punches. That's about where I'm at with things at this point. But hey, if we're doing a repeat, we should all be able to get out again, right? If we're doing a repeat. Well, I admire that you're able to bounce back from being cast into hell so quickly. Outing's not gonna solve anything, right? My father used to say the only way out when you're in the middle of the forest is through. I suppose you're correct. And absurd as it is, we've not much choice but to play the proverbial game once more. Very well then. I suppose these arrows are leading us to the start line again. It will stand to reason. Resigned to our fate, we followed the arrows. Und da sind wir wieder am Ende des Parts, denn anscheinend geht's von vorne los. Yeah, endlich! Noch ein Ziel, noch ein Rennen, noch ein Todesspiel. Hurra! Nur ohne Dog leider, denn der ist jetzt weg. Wie es wirklich weitergeht, seht den nächsten Part bei Zodiac Trial. Ich hoffe, es macht Spaß. Wir sollten wirklich langsam zum Ende kommen, glaube ich, weil... Kommt schon! Wir haben alle Endings, was kann noch kommen, alles. Wir werden sehen. Ich bedanke mich fürs Zugucken, wie immer, und bis nächstes Mal dann. Tschüss!